Danielle, Danny Houchins, grew up as the oldest of 3 children in a close-knit family. She and her younger sister and brother inherited their parents' love of adventure and the outdoors. They would go hiking, river rafting, rock climbing, and fishing. The family moved from Minnesota to Montana in the early 1990s to start a new chapter and to take advantage of the nearby mountains. Danny's parents loved skiing and worked on the ski patrol at the resort at Big Sky. Danny was a strong skier herself and inspired her younger sister to work harder to keep up with her. Danny had a dry sense of humor and could make anyone laugh almost as soon as she met them. She showed affection by playing tricks and pranks on her friends. She was very smart and an exceptional student. She excelled particularly in the fields of math and science. She hoped to pursue those fields in her career one day, potentially going into the medical field or studying marine biology. She also loved music, particularly the grunge bands that became so popular in the 90s. Saturday, September 21st, 1996, was the day of the town fall festival in Belgrade, Montana, which was held in the park that was just across the street from the Houchins family home. It was also Danny's father's birthday. 15-year-old Danny had been scheduled to go on a trip with her church youth group that day, but she decided at the last minute not to go. Instead, she woke up early to make her father a birthday cake. However, unbeknownst to Danny, her father was not home that morning. He had gone out to celebrate his birthday with his friends the night before. He had been drinking and decided that he was not fit to drive home. Danny was upset that he did not get home until later that morning, after she had stayed home from her trip for his birthday. Danny wanted to blow off some steam. As she often did, she sought refuge in the outdoors. Shortly before noon, she asked her mother Cheryl if she could go out to Cameron Bridge Fishing Access, a marshy, wooded area a few miles south of town. Cheryl reminded her daughter that they were having friends over later that day. She told Danny that she could go, but that she had to be home by 2 o'clock. Cheryl gave Danny her watch so that she would know when to come home. Danny did not return home by 2 o'clock. Danny would not have intentionally broken her promise to her mother, even though she had been upset that morning. Cheryl and one of her friends went to Cameron Bridge to look for Danny, arriving there around 3 p.m. They found Danny's white Chevrolet truck, which had been left unlocked despite the fact that valuable items that Danny normally took good care of, like her CDs and her father's computer, were inside of it. Danny's water bottle and keys were found along a trail leading away from the parking lot where the truck was parked. However, they could not find Danny. Danny was a new driver, so the unlocked car and discarded keys, held together by the numerous keychains Danny had proudly been collecting now that she could drive, immediately raised concerns for Cheryl. She ran through the immediate vicinity, calling Danny's name, and checking the bathrooms and other possible places Danny could conceivably be. She left a note on the truck telling Danny to wait there for her in case she came back, and began searching areas farther away from the parking lot. Just after 5 p.m., she contacted the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office asking for help. Deputies responded to the scene, and they soon made the decision to call in Gallatin County Search and Rescue. They, along with volunteer search groups, soon arrived to perform a grid search of the area. However, the searchers were called back after a few hours, once it got dark. The fishing access was near a river and other smaller waterways, and surrounded by dense woodlands. In addition, there was no ambient light in the area, making it very, very dark. Therefore, it was determined that continuing the search after dark would be unsafe for those conducting it. While the official search was called off for the night, some family friends of the Houchins family, who were familiar with the area, continued looking for Danny, despite the serious risks to their own safety. Danny's 12-year-old sister Stephanie was with a friend, doing her own search in town. Her friend's mother drove them around town so that they could show Danny's picture to members of the public. One of the places they stopped to show the pictures and ask for help was at the girls' high school basketball game. A close friend of Stephanie's, Levi, was at the basketball game that night and heard the details of Danny's disappearance. Levi and his family lived very close to the fishing access area where Danny had gone missing. Because his father was very familiar with Cameron Bridge, Levi called him and begged him to go help look for Danny. His father, Kelly, was very reluctant, but ultimately went down to the fishing access to look for Danny. After he searched for a short time, the batteries in Kelly's flashlight died, so he went to his brother Mike's home, which was nearby. They got new batteries and then went out looking for Danny together. After about 45 minutes of searching, Mike was about to tell his brother that they should go home for the night. Before he had a chance to, Kelly found Danny. When Mike walked over to his brother, he saw the back of Danny's head and could tell immediately that she was dead. Danny's father, Rex, had gone back to Cameron Bridge to look for Danny one last time for the night. He was going into the woods as Mike and Kelly were coming out of them, and was told that his daughter's body had been found. Danny had been found lying face down in shallow water, underneath a lot of marshy overgrowth. Her left arm was up above her head, and her mother's watch had been pulled down from her wrist onto her left hand. She was missing one of her sandals, which was later found some 20 feet away from where her body had been found. Her bra had been pushed up above her breasts, and the lower left edge of her underwear was rolled over. These details made it appear that her body had been pulled by her left arm to where it was found, and concealed under the grasses and reeds of the swampy area. The medical examiner found muddy material in Danny's stomach and upper and lower airways. There was a recent laceration in her vagina, indicative of some sort of sexual assault. 4 naturally shedded arm hairs that did not belong to Danny and could not be matched to anyone in her life were found in her underwear and on her cervix. The medical examiner found that Danny had died by drowning and ruled the manner of her death as undetermined rather than as a homicide. Until such time additional information indicates otherwise, the manner of death is undetermined, he wrote in his report. This finding was baffling to many familiar with the details of the case, both in Danny's family and in law enforcement. The scene appeared to indicate that Danny had been dragged by her arm so that her body could be concealed, and there was evidence of sexual assault, all of which meant that someone else was involved in Danny's death. While he claimed Danny's death was being investigated as a homicide, Gallatin County Sheriff Bill Slaughter also told the Bozeman Daily Chronicle that there was no indication of foul play in the case. "I think we've got to be prepared for the fact that this may have been an accidental drowning," he told the publication. Sheriff Slaughter's public reasoning for this belief was what he claimed was a lack of cuts or bruises on Danny's body. However, there were minor blunt force injuries to Danny's head and extremities, as well as cuts on the sides of her face that could have come from running through the woods or from trying to pull someone's hands away from her face. A major sticking point for the sheriff was the fact that Danny had been wearing a knee brace on the day of her death. She had injured her knee a few weeks earlier, dancing with friends, but her injury was nearly healed, and she was due to be cleared to stop wearing the brace by her doctor soon. However, the sheriff believed she could have re-injured her knee while at the fishing access, gotten stuck in the mud, fallen over, and drowned. However, Danny was very athletic and a strong swimmer. Furthermore, the water she was found in was so shallow that all Danny would have had to do was turn her head to the side in order to be able to breathe. The only substance detected on her toxicology screening was caffeine, so there were no drugs in Danny's system that would have impaired her body's natural instincts to fight to be able to breathe. In addition, this scenario does not explain how mud was forced into Danny's airway and stomach. Drowning victims generally are found to have water in their lungs. The presence of mud throughout Danny's body was more consistent with her head being forced underwater and into the mud below. Former Sheriff's Detective Cindy Botek became a Gallatin County Sheriff's deputy just days before Danny died. She has publicly stated that investigating Danny's case never appeared to be a priority to the leadership in the sheriff's office, and that when she joined the Detective Bureau in 2006 and tried to pursue new leads in Danny's case, she was met with resistance from her bosses and received no help from previous investigators assigned to the case. Former Sheriff Slaughter has denied ever deprioritizing Danny's case and has said that it was always treated as a homicide, regardless of its formal classification. However, multiple individuals connected to the sheriff's office at the time of Danny's death have been critical of how the office handled Danny's case and have stated that the leadership within the office was too quick to dismiss Danny's death as an accident or imply that it was somehow a suicide. A former sheriff's deputy has reported that Sheriff Slaughter's attitude seemed to indicate that he just wanted the case to be over. Fortunately, this attitude was not shared by everyone in the sheriff's office or by investigators who joined the office years later. As technology advanced, new forensic examinations were done on the evidence in Danny's case. Since the hairs found on her body had been naturally shed, they did not contain their roots, which are their main source of nuclear DNA. These hairs do, however, normally contain mitochondrial DNA. In 2019, Danny's family began more actively campaigning for the investigation into her case to receive additional resources. They learned that Sheriff's Captain Matt Boxmeyer had taken an interest in finally solving the case. Danny's case was reopened in 2019. In 2021, Dan Springer became sheriff of Gallatin County and committed additional resources to the investigation. He hired Tom Elfmont, a retired Los Angeles Police Department officer who was working as a private investigator. Tom, in turn, sought out the help of Sergeant Court Depweg of the Newport Beach Police Department, who specializes in using DNA technology to solve cases. In August of 2023, Danny's case was finally formally reclassified as a homicide after semen was discovered in her underwear during a re-examination of the evidence in her case. As had long been suspected by those close to the case, there needed to be advancements in DNA technology before a suspect could finally be identified in Danny's case. The 4 foreign hairs found on Danny's body were submitted to Astria Forensics in California. They were able to use cutting-edge forensic DNA genome sequencing to develop a partial DNA profile from one of them. There were no matches to this profile in the combined DNA index system. The profile was therefore sent to Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia in hopes that they could use genetic genealogy to find a match. Parabon successfully did so in 2024, identifying a potential suspect as a man named Paul Nathaniel Hutchinson. Hutchinson had no criminal or traffic history, and his name had not come up during the investigation up until this point. In 2024, Hutchinson was a 55-year-old married father of 2 adult children. He had worked for 22 years as a fisheries biologist for the Bureau of Land Management, based in the agency's field office in Dillon, Montana, where he also lived. In September of 1996, when Danny was killed, he had just enrolled as a student at Montana State University in Bozeman. On July 23, 2024, investigators approached Hutchinson outside the Bureau of Land Management office where he worked, as he unloaded a pickup truck with 2 other people. When they identified themselves as being with the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office and said that they were hoping to speak with him, Hutchinson went pale. Hutchinson was interviewed for approximately 2 hours. During this interview, investigators report that he showed signs of being extremely nervous. He was sweating profusely, scratching at his face, and biting his hand. He was shown a picture of Danny, and in response, he slumped down in his chair and looked uncomfortable. After the interview, his behavior, especially his driving, was erratic. At 4:17 the following morning, Hutchinson called 911 and asked for assistance before hanging up. When deputies from the Beaverhead County Sheriff's Office arrived at his location, they found his body on the side of the road. He had shot himself in the head. A DNA sample was taken from his body, and it was a match to the DNA found on Danny's body. Gallatin County Sheriff Dan Springer announced that Hutchinson had been identified as the individual responsible for Danny's rape and murder on August 8, 2024. There is no known connection between Danny and Hutchinson. Hutchinson was known to be an avid outdoorsman, so it is feasible that he had been at Cameron Bridge that day in 1996 for recreational purposes. Danny's rape and murder appear to have been crimes of opportunity. An obituary for Hutchinson was briefly posted online, but once he was publicly identified as Danny's killer by the sheriff's office, his wife replaced it with a statement which read, "We are absolutely heartbroken to learn this news, and our hearts go out to the Houchins family. It is good to know that they will at last be able to find the closure that they deserve. Our own family was already reeling from dealing with Paul's suicide. In 24 years of marriage, there was never any hint that something like this could be lurking in the background. Paul was an exceptional husband and father. This latest news makes our grieving so much more complicated. We would appreciate being given the space to process and come to terms with this development as we mourn. The difficult position the Hutchinson family has been left in is not lost on law enforcement. I feel sorrow for the Hutchinson family. They were unaware, of course, and in many ways, they are also victims of this man," Sheriff Springer said in an interview with the Montana Free Press. Danny's sister Stephanie spoke at the press conference announcing Hutchinson's identification. While she is happy that her sister's case is finally solved, her celebration over it was short-lived. It's quickly replaced with a tangled mess of frustration, disbelief, and anger, she said. The institutions that are designed to protect the rights of victims, to ensure that vicious killers are incarcerated, to deliver justice in Montana, those institutions failed my sister. Danielle's story should anger you, should make you think about your mothers, your sisters, your wives, and your daughters, should make you think about everything you would do to protect and honor the women you love. While Hutchinson cannot be tried or convicted for what he did to Danny, and therefore will never be incarcerated for his crimes, Stephanie still thinks that her sister finally has justice after 28 years. In an interview with KBZK News, she said, "I don't condone suicide. I think that if people are hurting, they should get help. But I am really glad that Danny's killer is dead, even if by his own hand. This is justice for my sister, and the idea of him being out there doesn't have to haunt me anymore, and doesn't have to haunt my family. And so, this is resolution."